Over the last couple months, especially with all of the conversations around American policing and the criminal justice system, I've been getting recommended videos about police trainings. These trainings are billed as simulations of what a police officer will go through in the day-to-day. Here's some of the advertising material. There's a twist on these videos that I found a lot as well, which is reporters and civilians going through the same type of training.
Wave 3 News takes you inside LMPD's use of force simulator to see if some of the department's toughest critics can pass the test.
A man beating a woman with a bat. You're the police officer. What would you do? Witness in a fraud case. Her husband barges into the kitchen, then pulls a knife.
The way all these newscasts end is by summarizing that the day-to-day job of an officer is very hard and challenging, and that we should empathize with them for that.
It's a reminder of the intensity of the challenge they face and the intensity of the training to try to be ready. But up close is a whole different perspective.
I'll definitely be thinking differently the next time I cover one.
Here, it's a tough job, and hopefully you have a little more perspective on it tonight.
Now, when I watch these videos, they honestly left me with a lot of questions. For example, are these trainings actually putting cops through situations that are true to real life? When I say that, I don't mean like, are they impossible to imagine? Because they are all possible to imagine, but are they actually what an officer is going to see in the day-to-day? How often are they going to see situations like these? What specific actions are these trainings trying to encourage police to do? What's the deal with these news stories, and why don't they really answer any of those questions? And do other people watch these videos and get kind of confused like I do? If you read the comments, most of the people watching these videos seem to agree that they are a good representation and that they're a positive thing for people like myself who are civilians who have never been a cop before to go through in order to build that empathy for police. Hopefully the fact that I've never been a cop doesn't make you immediately dismiss my opinion. And for some of you wondering why Motorcycle Man is talking about cops, there's a lot of history to this. As a quick summary for those who are totally new here, I had a cop pull a gun on me a couple years ago, which I caught on my GoPro. The end result of that cop drawing a gun on me was that I didn't get a ticket. In fact, they actually paid me money because I sued them, and I won.
Last question for you, Alex. You have decided to move forward with a lawsuit. It hasn't been filed yet, but you're working on that. What do you want out of that lawsuit?
Well, in talking to my lawyer of Carney and Gillespie, we have a variety of policy changes. The two that I mentioned, and then he has concerns about getting to people before they explode like this, and King County's internal procedures around they identify people who might have these problems. We want to focus on those. The amount of money is irrelevant. They're not going to, we'd gladly trade no money for policy changes, but I mean, realistically, they're probably going to fight that the whole way.
They settled with me. They settled with me for $65,000, and they settled with me to change their entire use of force policy based on that interaction. So I've actually got a lot of experience discussing these types of situations with the public and with law enforcement. On top of that, the argument that you have to have lived the experience in order to critique the experience, I find to be pretty intellectually dishonest. For example, I'm sure you wouldn't dismiss my critique if I said that I thought the Catholic Church had a problem with priests molesting children and that they should do something about that. But you know what? I actually decided to play that game this time anyway. To help answer my questions around if these trainings are good, what they make cops feel, what they encourage cops to do, and if there are alternatives, I invited a former police officer to talk about it.
Hey there, my name is Phil. I run a little YouTube channel called That Dang Dad, and I was a police officer in a pretty busy area of Southern California for about 8 years. But now I'm a police and prison abolitionist because I believe the current system is not working and it's not making any of us any safer.
We're going to cover a lot in these videos, and so to make them easier to digest, I decided I'd break them out into kind of 3 different parts. And I hope you'll stick with me. If you enjoy them, like, subscribe for more where I talk about this stuff occasionally, although it's usually motorcycles. Let's get started on the first part. What is F.A.T.S, and what is it trying to get police to do?
Respond to a burglary in progress.
You've been dispatched to the scene of a reported suspicious person loitering around the campus when you encounter the following.
Sir, I need you to step away from the door.
Do not come through the door.
Put your weapon down.
Sir, drop your weapon.
I need you to put your weapon down,
Sir, drop your weapon. Drop your weapon.
So the device that I saw in those videos looks like a F.A.T.S machine, a firearm training simulator. Basically, they put like a little attachment on a gun and they turn it into kind of a Nintendo duck hunt gun. And they run little scenarios on a screen for you. And you kind of just stand there as the scene unfolds. You might narrate what you're thinking and what you're doing. And you basically decide when to draw your gun and when to shoot or not to shoot.
Now, there are a number of different F.A.T.S machines, and they've evolved over the years. Let me show you some examples of what I've seen.
Left, right. Always look left, right.
He didn't get me.
You're starting to breathe hard now,
Yeah.
right? Look behind you.
Valuable because they find out in a training environment some problems that they may have and develop better skills, judgmental skills, before getting out on the street and actually facing that situation in real life.
If an officer decides to fire, the simulator keeps track of every shot fired and whether it hits the subject. And
please follow his orders. The last scene is the most confusing and disturbing. A traffic stop, a wanted man, and a preteen girl bursting from the truck with a shotgun pointed at me.
Don't worry, we're going to come back to that last one. Now, the trainers and police describe these as a simulation. I think that is a overly generous description of what it actually is. I think it's better described as a recreation, or more realistically, it's a role play. It is actors acting out a scene, and it is trainers deciding how that scene goes. There's nothing random about it like there is in the real world or a simulation could potentially create. I think it's also important to acknowledge the framing and the language that law enforcement uses to describe these, because it's critical to how they sell them as being important to their job. A number of people that go through it, including the reporters, compare it to a video game. And law enforcement generally doesn't want to make that comparison, although I think it's pretty apt.
The next step of our training was similar to a video game.
But this is still a make-believe vacuum standing in front of a screen with a laser-operated gun. It's no Xbox game. The scenarios are taken from real life and death police calls.
Supposedly the guy running the machine can like alter the scenario if he thinks you're giving good commands or if you're looking hesitant or whatever, but I never found it to be all that interactive. They all kind of went the same way. Somebody reached in and either pulled out a banana or an Uzi, and that was basically like, oops, you killed someone innocent, or oh, you got him, or whatever. So
there's a lot of video games I've played that are very similar to this. Let me show you an example. This is Area 51, a game that's been out for 20 years.
No.
There are common themes in these F.A.T.S trainings. For example, there's often very limited contextual information you're given that wouldn't exactly line up with the cop showing up on scene to these types of situations.
You see a female police officer arguing with a suspect.
Officer, there's another officer in trouble. There's a big guy. It's just right. It's on the other side of that building. Hurry.
Often the actions of the suspect are confusing, I would say, and I don't know if I would call them realistic. For example, a number of videos show people actively drawing either a fake weapon or a weapon that is hard to believe somebody would draw on a cop who had a gun.
I'm responding to a warehouse break-in. In the dark, I encounter a man after hearing someone call for help.
Show me both of your hands.
I fire after the man suddenly pulls out what I think is a gun. Turns out it was only a staple gun.
Often the subjects very openly go into their pockets or waistband in order to get things that are not a weapon, sometimes even pretending to draw a weapon.
All right, I got a gun.
Sir, please.
All right.
Please put your hands on the car for me,
Yeah,
please.
Coming out. Bang, 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 bang!
Many of these videos depict suspects charging long distances with blunt or sharp objects.
Drop.
Another common theme is the ambush, which is unprovoked, the player being attacked. Either the suspect you're talking to, somebody that's also involved in the situation, or occasionally just a random person off screen who comes out of nowhere.
Hands right in the center. This is not right. This is injustice.
Please. Keep your hands where we can.
Fuck off!
Hostage situations are also common, often of other officers. Let's now go back to the kid with the shotgun. I looked pretty hard and I couldn't find a single instance of a news report that describes something similar to this situation. This leads us to the first of two critical questions. What are these trainings trying to get police officers to do differently? The central theme of these trainings is that police officers are always moments away from a life or death situation, and so they should feel justified using lethal force at any time.
The scenarios always felt kind of unrealistic to me. Like, first of all, the camera kind of forces you to stand in places that I wouldn't have stood in a real encounter. It forces you into unsafe places, it exposes you, and so it kind of forces you to be in a more dangerous scenario than you otherwise would have been. You know, it doesn't let you sneak up on people, doesn't let you take cover and give commands from cover. You're sort of forced to be out in the open, like the OK Corral, ready for a shootout. From my experience, both being in F.A.T.S training and also watching civilians go through it, is that it creates this kind of false narrative that any random person on the street might have a gun and might try to kill you at any time. It trains you to want to have your gun out the minute anyone is not complying with you, because your reaction speed will always typically be behind that of somebody who's already decided that they're going to draw and shoot at you. You know, and in very rare cases, yes, some random person has just shot a cop for no reason, but it's just so unlikely, though. It's the vast minority of cases. And I would say that far more cops have accidentally gotten all amped up and shot an innocent person than have been ambushed by just some rando off the street. You know, most police officers never fire their gun on duty, but police training is obsessed with making sure that you're ready to shoot to kill at any given moment. Police training is much more afraid that you will fail to kill than they are that you'll kill the wrong person.
This theme is reinforced in a variety of ways. The system itself isn't sophisticated enough to adapt to the officer's verbal commands in real time, so it reinforces the idea that verbal commands are not effective. They're taught to feel afraid of everybody that they interact with, see everything as a weapon that could be used against them, interpret anything less than full compliance as active hostility, escalate to lethal force quickly, and that it's okay to use lethal force with very little information about a situation. These reports also make it very obvious that these are unintuitive perspectives for the average person.
Bang, 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 bang!
Why did you make the decision not to shoot?
I thought I saw he didn't have a gun.
Okay.
I thought I saw he didn't have a gun.
My property!
Why'd you wait so long? Yeah, I felt like I waited too long. You did? I did. I waited too long.
I went through the scenarios too, without seeing what Maupin did.
So, do you have keys, or do you have anything to show me that?
Don't worry about it.
No, I need to talk to you. Come on out over here. Well, I'm dead.
The second critical question is whether or not these trainings are actually preparing jobs for their day-to-day life by showing them true-to-life scenarios. Let me broadly summarize some of the scenario themes that I saw over and over. A violently intoxicated person attacking with either blunt, sharp objects or maybe even just their hands. Routine traffic stops where the suspect doesn't have anything like an active warrant or a stolen vehicle turning into violent shootouts. Hostage situations where the officer has to convince the suspect not to harm themselves or others. Other officers involved in the scenario being easily overpowered when attempting to use less than lethal force options. Ambushes, either by the suspect or often from somebody that's completely off screen who enters the scenario out of nowhere. Terrorists, often with explosives such as a suicide vest, although that's fallen out of vogue a little bit as we've moved farther away from 9/11 and we've kind of entered this school shooting era of like Newtown, for example.
But what have we seen in the news lately? Hey, it's not so much, hey, just a cop writing regular traffic tickets. It's people that have issues or don't like cops, or something happened to their family. It's like, I'm going to kill a cop today. And how many ambushes have happened around the country where a cop is just doing his job or sitting in his car and somebody comes up and bam.
So, is this reality? Is this what cops are going to see in the day-to-day, or even ever in their careers.
Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI and Navy SEAL, is my partner.
And we should mention the reality is that most officers never shoot
That's
their
absolutely
guns,
correct.
right?
You know, I would say F.A.T.S training is valuable for teaching people to draw guns quickly, to shoot to kill accurately, and not to second guess themselves when they've decided to kill. So if a society wants to produce deadlier police officers, then yeah, great, F.A.T.S is awesome for that. But like, I never shot anyone in my career, and I worked in a major narcotics trafficking corridor. The bulk of what I did on duty was talking to people, not fighting them. So the best trainings that I had for what I actually did in a given shift were like trainings in persuasion and communication and, you know, if I'm being honest, emotional manipulation. Plus, back when I was a cop, it was very in vogue to try to get like the mayor, the city council, other city leaders, random people from the public in a F.A.T.S machine, because it contributes to this kind of propaganda that says that police work is like the most dangerous profession and everyone's just trying to kill you at any given minute. Spoiler alert, police work isn't even in the top 10 of most dangerous professions in America.
My conclusion after watching hours of these videos is that the premise that these are a day in the life of a police officer just doesn't hold any water. These are purposely contrived scenarios designed to reinforce the premise that all cops are in danger at all times of the day against a barrage of violent threats. But that isn't what any of the news reports say. What the news reports actually say is that these are great tools for preparing officers for what they're going to deal with in the real world. And why is going to have to wait until next video. I hope you'll join me in the next video where we talk about how law enforcement leverages the news media in order to persuade the public of its perspective.